congratulations on the film.
Well,
What I found was, so once I'd finished watching it and I found that it was based on a real life haunted house, I just wanted to go and find out all about it. And I wondered whether when you read the script, whether it had the same reaction on you, really, or did you know about it already?
no, I didn't, and I see. I joined. I come at it slightly differently because I kind of read it, the script. I liked the script, and then discovered that it was real. I said, "What do you mean real? It's not real. It can't be real." I'm sort of like, so it really happened. The real characters. Oh, you mean they're real characters? I don't. But I'm of a belief like, well, I'm not going to get into is it real? Is it not real? Did certain characters come into the house and get affected by that house? To me, it's all hauntings, all ghost stories are about what's in the character who's in the house, and it's like so. I've always been more so. As soon as I felt that, I was like, okay, well, I need to know that I want to push this. So very much, is it in her head? Is it her? Is it the relationship she's in? She's in this nutcase relationship, which in the 1930s, even being married to a woman without a child would have been a scandal. And some of these things weren't really, I felt, pushed enough in the script. So I said, let's get away from just trying to replicate what happened for real. Let's use the characters and push it slightly more at some tangents. Use a version of Harry and keep the Harry character, but make him this garish kind of modern. Is he straight? Is he gay? Is he an atheist? Is he toying with taunting the priest? And he asked the questions that we all want to ask. And why are you with this man? He's and he's very direct. So we all pushed it that way. And the reason is as I say, I feel that all ghost stories they're about you. They're about what your fears are. If you went into a house alone in a spooky place, your mind would make you more scared than you need to be. And so would mine. If you went there with a group of friends on a party and you're all sharing a room, you wouldn't even give it a thought about so it's all within us. And I think it's I like to lean into that. And I think that's what I think Jess has done such a great job in terms of, she really captures the predicament she's in, if you like. And by that I don't just mean the house. I mean the predicament of a marriage that she's taken for convenience with her daughter, and so it's all those things I find interesting in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sense of isolation that she has in her marriage is mirrored really in the sense of isolation that she's got in this house. The lack of trust that her husband has in her affects actually not trusting her of whether she is of sound mind and body, and that adds to this
not trusting her past, not trusting, not he's too scared to sleep with her, and it sort of ferments in the house, and the house represents, the house ferments their breakdown, if you like. And so it's these slightly grubby things that I want to lean on. And I say grubby because you look at these kind of very clipped 1940s films of the period. We've all grown up with the Spitfire, the success of World War II. It all feeds into the sort of Brexit myth of the good old version of England, which was this version when fascism was on the rise. Gay guys hung themselves. Marriages were, people in these stifling marriages. So we're just trying to sort of lean into which version of old England do you think was brilliant, and kind of touch into that a little bit. The good old days are today. Today are the good old days.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's what makes this film so much more interesting, because there are so many other sort of conflicts and complexities set around.
I just wanted to lean into it a bit. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was it. Yeah.
And because we've also got, we're kind of on the eve of World War II, so that adds this other kind of whole layer of this onerousness that's hovering over the country, doesn't it? That adds again to the tension.
Yeah, and the idea that prejudice and judgmental, and anger, these are all things that we're seeing today. we're seeing angry white people getting angry because what about me? Why was I left behind? This isn't right. And that's fascism. And that's what happened in that period. I mean, I grew up, thinking, it could never happen here. It's a German thing. Now we go, no, it's not. It's not a German thing. It's happening in America. We're seeing it play out on the news, and it's really scary. And I think just sort of to touch into that, it just makes you, I think, to open up sores, if you like. That's what I'm trying to do in the film. So you realize, yeah, look, there's some scares in here, but actually the relationship feels more destructive in a way. And then you see that this woman from the past was in this real abuse, with these monks, and you go, well, there's abuse going on here, and then there's much, much worse abuse going on there. And it's just sort of, yeah, I like films that do that, and that's what we try to do, really. It's just to make you go, ugh, there's some sort of grubby bits in these behind the curtains, if you like.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, to play all of this out convincingly, you've really got to have a strong cast that are able to provide you a nuanced performance, and you've nailed it with all the cast. You must have been so blessed.
Yeah, I just thought it was a film where when I really liked the script and what there was and what I felt I could lean into. And I'd worked with Sean before in Creep, in my first film. He played the monster, and he's just got off the back of doing 2 back-to-back Mission Impossible movies. So he's gone from the biggest films you can to suddenly sharing a house with us up in the north, doing this. And then Jess, who I'd worked with before about 8 years ago, and stayed in touch with, became friends with, and she's just so brilliant in it. And she's got that kind of, she's like, we're both quite emotional people, me and Jess, in the sense that we'll tell you what we're feeling, and so she really feels that kind of, she really likes the idea of, here's a woman who's made a decision for her child, and because society at that time says she has to, who has a past, who's suffered mental illness, who she can't discuss that with anybody. And it's what I like in the way is it's like it's a filthy secret. It's a filthy secret that only men can talk about. That she was in she was in a sanatorium, and it's all this kind of stuff that I really find interesting, and how terrible it is. That's why the good old days of today.
Yeah.
It really is.
Exactly. And you've got somebody like John Lynch as well, that
Love John,
like this puppeteer, isn't he? And he's just incredible in the film.
You should meet John. He's lovely. It's my 4th film with John. I love John. He's like John's like, for me, he's like a mate, and he's like, John's like grew up, because obviously John was around at the time because he did Cow way back, and suddenly he found himself being mates with Larry Mullen from U2. And he's just like, and I'm always like, because he knows I grew up loving U2's Chris, he's got this beautiful Irish accent. But yeah, he's like a puppet master in it, and he's Machiavellian, and he's playing the guy, he's put him there because he knows that the two of them may bring out this evil that's there. And yeah, he's just, and and he's, I like the scene where what's the name goes, Zeke Heil, Zeke, he can see he's a fascist. He uses people's weakness to, yeah.
And also another huge character, and I would imagine just equally as important casting, is the house that you're going to be using. Can you tell us a little bit more about going on your location hunts for that?
Well, no, it was a weird thing. It all happened slightly in reverse. So what happened was we knew we had only so much money to make the film, and so we knew that we had to be really clever to make the film for that money. I'd never coming off the back of doing big TV shows where you have unlimited equipment, I suddenly was going back to a level of budget that was lower than I did for my first film. And it was good to have that, because you go, right, we can do what we want effectively, but we've got very little, money. So Jason found this house through a contact of his. It's a stately home, and we used a small corner of it, even though it's big. So all of the rooms you see are certain rooms that are inside this home. And in the epilogue section, when you see the Nazi flags hanging up on what is supposed to be some Bavarian place, that's actually the size of the whole house. What we used was the servants' quarters as the entrance. and then we walked around the 30 bedrooms and chose the bedrooms we liked and used. So we kind of designed it through the space, so to save the budget. And I think it's really, yeah, it's clever how it turned out. So the kitchen's the same, the bedrooms are all there. We just chose the spookiest ones and took, you know, there was all this art all over the walls. We had to take all that down. So it was kind of like a reverse production design in a way.
Was it because you said like you're used to working in big big budgets where, you know, money isn't really
definitely
an option? When you've got to sort of tame that down and you are working with a limited budget, do you think that gives you the opportunity to force your sort of creativity, because you need to problem solve with what you've got? You can't just throw money at it.
Well, that's exactly right. It's like the hardest thing about filmmaking is time and money. It's like if you've got loads of money, you can just, you know, there's always a limit, but this was below the limit in a sense that you couldn't box your way out of it through getting a second unit director or anything like that. You've got to, but what we found and what's been happening gradually in the last 3 years, mostly from doing these TV series in between, that obviously TV's taken off so much, is because in TV you want to direct it the way you want to direct it. If you give it shot of every single character, you end up with, you make it in the edit. And so just naturally I've been being more specific with the shots. You know, if you look at the start of The Godfather, you've got the camera slowly pushes in on Marlon Brando, and then at the very end of the scene it cuts to a sort of single of Robert Duvall, who opens the door and lets someone out. There's no other shots. You know, there's 5 or 6 characters in that, and they're all positioned in the right place. So what we started to do is just be very specific with where we put the camera, where we shot, and you have to plan it much more. So in that regard, it was quite disciplined. It had to be.
And that I'm kind of having to wrap it up because I've got to keep to the same time.
Because I'm late anyway. So.
Yeah, no. I wanted to ask you as well, why do you think horror as a genre works so well as a tool, as a social commentary? In horror, it seems to be a great platform to be able to bring things out in the open that you wouldn't normally talk about.
Well, that's interesting because it's always done it. But it's always been a kind of a B-movie platform, and when I started, it was obviously in the early 2000s. There was a lot of stuff getting made, it was a lot of the torture porn, it was all called then. But if you look, you know, in 10 years when they start looking back on that period, and you know, you look at the 70s movies, the slasher movies of the 70s, they're all informed by the Vietnam War. I think when you look at the movies of the early to the noughties, it's all Abu Ghraib, there's all that stuff that we're seeing in the news. So there's social commentary anyway. But I think in the last 10 years or 15 years since I've started making films, it's become even more intellectual. Horror movies now allow you to do all the things you want to do, but the scale of them and the kind of when they break through, like The Witch or Get Out, films that they can really be about something. And I think Get Out is, you know, I mean, I could happily smile and retire if I'd made that film, because it's the perfect balance of social commentary and a really great night out at the movies. You know, he manages to do both things so perfectly in that film, and I think that, but just to expand the answer, is what I love about the genre is it allows you to, and certainly if you see in this, to really go into sort of, I'm really glad when you mentioned John Lynch's role, just to go into these, interrogate things, and as long as you give some scares, and as long as the film still makes you, entertains you, at the end you can say some stuff. And it's good because everybody gets what they need, as long as, but you've got to make sure you give them enough of a jump and a scare as well. But it's good, you can slip it under the rug. So. Exactly,
and you've definitely done that with this film. I really enjoyed it. I've watched it a couple of times, and I wish you much success with it, Christopher.
Thank you very much. Been lovely chatting to you.
Lovely to speak to you. Take care. Bye bye.